If you can still rise after life has tried to break you, if your body aches but your spirit refuses to kneel, if at 60 you can still stand tall when others surrender, then listen closely, because you are stronger than most men alive, and you don't even realize it. There is a quiet truth that no one talks about. Strength is not loud, it doesn't shout, it doesn't need validation. Real strength is silent. It's the man who wakes up with pain in his bones, but still chooses discipline over excuses. It's the man who has seen failure, betrayal, loss, and yet he still shows up for life as if it owes him nothing. When you were young, strength was easy to define. It was muscle, speed, power. It was how much you could lift, how fast you could run, how long you could endure without breaking a sweat. But life has a way of rewriting that definition, because by the time a man reaches 60, strength is no longer about the body alone. It becomes something deeper, something heavier, something earned. At 60, strength is waking up without applause and still choosing to move forward. It's carrying memories that most people wouldn't survive and still finding a reason to smile. It's having every excuse to become bitter, but choosing instead to remain kind. And here's what most men never understand: the world doesn't measure this kind of strength. It overlooks it. It ignores it. It celebrates youth, speed, and appearance, but it forgets the man who has endured decades of life and still stands with dignity. But you know the truth because you've lived it. You've faced moments where everything inside you wanted to quit. Times when the weight of responsibility crushed your spirit. Times when no one came to save you and you had to become your own rescue. And yet, you're still here, still breathing, still fighting, still standing. That alone makes you rare. Most men don't break in one moment. They break slowly, quietly, piece by piece. They lose their fire, their purpose, their sense of self. They begin to drift through life instead of living it. But if you can still do this, if you can still wake up with intention, if you can still push your body even when it resists, if you can still control your mind when negativity creeps in, then you possess something that cannot be taught. You possess resilience, and resilience is the highest form of strength. Let me tell you something powerful. A man who can control his emotions at 60 is stronger than a man who can lift the heaviest weight at 25. Because controlling your body is easy compared to controlling your mind. Anger, regret, disappointment, fear, these don't disappear with age. In many ways, they grow louder, but the strong man, the rare man, learns to master them. He learns that reacting is easy, but responding with wisdom is strength. He understands that silence is not weakness, it's control. He knows that peace is not something you find, it's something you protect. And maybe no one has ever told you this before, but if you've reached a point where you no longer feel the need to prove yourself to anyone, where your value comes from within, not from the opinion of others, then you have already won a battle that most men spend their entire lives losing. Because real strength is not about domination. It's about self-mastery, and self-mastery takes a lifetime. Think about it. If you can still wake up early, even when your body begs for rest, you are strong. If you can still take care of your responsibilities without complaining, you are strong. If you can still treat people with respect in a world that has grown cold, you are strong. If you can still believe in something greater than your past, you are strong. And if you can still look at yourself in the mirror and say, "I'm not done yet," then you are unstoppable. Because most men at 60 don't lose their strength, they abandon it. They stop trying, they stop growing. They accept limits that were never truly theirs. But you're different. There's something inside you that refuses to fade. A quiet fire, a steady force, a deep understanding that life is not over, it's simply entering a new chapter. And this chapter requires a different kind of strength, not the strength to prove yourself, but the strength to become yourself, to let go of who you had to be and finally embrace who you are. Because here's the truth, most people never realize the man who continues to grow at 60 becomes more powerful than the man who peaked at 30. Why? Because growth at 60 is a choice. It's not driven by ego, competition, or insecurity. It's driven by purpose. And purpose is what separates the average man from the exceptional one. So if you're still learning, still improving, still pushing yourself even when no one is watching, then understand this clearly. You are not behind. You are not finished. You are not weak. You are becoming something most men never reach. And that is true strength. There's a moment in every man's life when the noise fades, when the applause disappears, when the world stops watching. And what remains in that silence is the truth of who he really is. At 60, that silence becomes louder than ever. No more chasing validation. No more proving your worth to people who were never paying attention. It's just you, your choices, your habits, and the life you've built piece by piece. And this is where most men face something they are not prepared for. Not weakness of the body, but emptiness of the spirit. Because when the distractions fall away, a man is left with one question: did I become the man I was meant to be? Some men avoid that question. They drown it in routine, in comfort, in excuses. They say, I've done enough. It's too late now. And slowly, without realizing it, they begin to fade. But not you. Because if you're still listening, still searching, still feeling that quiet voice inside you pushing for more, then you haven't faded. You've awakened, and awakening at 60 is a different kind of power. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's subtle, but unstoppable. It's the moment you realize that life didn't pass you by, it prepared you. Every mistake you made, every failure that humbled you, every heartbreak that nearly broke you, they weren't the end of your story. They were training for this exact moment, because now you don't move blindly, you move with awareness. You don't react emotionally, you respond with intention. You don't chase everything, you choose what truly matters. And that shift, that quiet transformation, is what makes a man dangerous in the best way possible. Because now, you are no longer controlled by the world. You are guided by something deeper. Let me ask you something honestly. Can you sit alone without feeling restless? Can you be at peace without needing constant distraction? Can you face your own thoughts without running from them? If the answer is yes, then you've reached a level of strength that most men never will, because being alone without being lonely is mastery. And mastery is rare. The world today is filled with noise. Everyone is talking, shouting, demanding attention. But very few people are listening, especially to themselves. But you've learned to listen. You've learned that wisdom doesn't come from talking more. It comes from understanding more. And that's why your strength is different now. It's not about force. It's about clarity. You see through things that once confused you. You understand people in ways you couldn't before. You recognize patterns, intentions, and energy without needing explanations. And that kind of awareness is power. But here's the challenge most men face at this stage: comfort. Comfort is the silent enemy. It whispers, you've done enough. It tells you to slow down, to settle, to accept less than what you're capable of. It convinces you that growth has an expiration date. But deep down, you know that's a lie. Because as long as you're breathing, you're capable of becoming more. Not for the world, not for approval, but for yourself. And here's where your true strength is tested. Not in how much you've achieved, but in whether you're still willing to grow. Because growth at 60 requires courage. It requires humility to admit that you don't know everything. It requires discipline to keep improving when no one is pushing you. And it requires vision to see a future that others can't imagine for you. But if you can still learn, still adapt, still challenge yourself, then you are operating at a level most men never reach. Think about it. If you can still change your habits, you are strong. If you can still forgive your past, you are strong. If you can still build something meaningful, you are strong. If you can still believe in tomorrow, you are strong. And if you can still look at life with curiosity instead of fear, then you are not aging, you are evolving. Because age does not define a man, his mindset does. There are men at 30 who have already given up, and there are men at 60 who are just getting started. The difference is not physical, it's internal. It's the fire inside. And that fire, if you still feel it, no matter how small, must be protected at all costs. Because once a man loses that fire, he doesn't just lose motivation, he loses himself. But the man who protects it, who feeds it with discipline, purpose, and belief, becomes something unstoppable. He becomes timeless, and you have the opportunity to become that man, not by doing something extraordinary overnight, but by refusing to stop, by refusing to settle, by refusing to let the world convince you that your best days are behind you. Because they're not, they're waiting. And the strongest men, the rare ones, are the ones who keep moving toward them, no matter their age. So the question is not whether you still have strength. The question is, what will you do with it now? There comes a point where a man stops asking life for permission and starts living on his own terms. At 60, that moment is no longer optional, it's necessary, because by now you've seen enough to know that waiting is the fastest way to lose what time you have left. You've watched opportunities slip, people change, years pass in silence, and somewhere inside you there's a voice that whispers no more. No more hesitation, no more holding back, no more shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that never deserved you. And this is where your strength begins to transform into something even more powerful: authority, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that commands respect without saying a word. Because when a man has lived long enough, struggled deep enough, and reflected honestly enough, he carries a presence that cannot be faked. You don't need to prove anything anymore. Your life has already spoken. But here's the truth most men never reach: just because you've lived doesn't mean you've fully lived. And that realization can either break you or awaken you, because it forces you to look at your life with brutal honesty. Did you take the risks you were afraid of? Did you speak the words you held back? Did you chase what mattered or settle for what was easy? These questions, they don't come to judge you, they come to free you. Because once you face them, once you accept your past without running from it, something incredible happens. You stop carrying regret like a burden and start using it like fuel, and that shift, that mental shift, is what separates a man who fades away from a man who rises again. Because yes, you can rise again, not as the man you once were, but as a man who understands himself deeply. A man who is no longer driven by fear, but by clarity, and clarity changes everything. It changes how you spend your time. It changes who you allow into your life. It changes what you tolerate and what you walk away from without hesitation. And most importantly, it changes how you see yourself. Because for the first time, you're not chasing an identity. You're living in alignment with it, and that is rare, very rare. Let me tell you something that might challenge you. Many men reach 60 and become invisible. Not because the world ignores them, but because they stop showing up. They withdraw, they disconnect. They convince themselves that their time has passed, but the truth is, the world doesn't make you invisible. You do when you stop participating in your own life. But if you can still engage, still contribute, still bring value to the people around you, then you are anything but invisible. You are essential, because wisdom is needed now more than ever. Discipline is needed now more than ever. Integrity, character, patience, these are qualities that the world is starving for. And you, if you've held on to them, you carry something priceless. But carrying it is not enough. You must use it. You must share it. You must live it fully, unapologetically. Because your strength is no longer just for you. It's for the people who are watching you. The younger ones who don't know the path yet. The ones who are lost, confused, searching for direction. They may not say it, but they're observing. And when they see a man at 60 who still walks with purpose, who still takes care of himself, who still speaks with conviction, who still lives with passion, it changes something inside them. It gives them hope. It shows them what's possible, and that is a responsibility, not a burden, but a legacy. Because legacy is not built at the end of life. It's built in the moments you choose to show up again and again, even when it would be easier not to. So if you can still do this, if you can still push yourself when no one is watching, if you can still stand for something when it's not popular, if you can still grow when others have stopped trying, then understand this deeply. You are not just strong. You are leading, whether you realize it or not. And leadership at this stage of life is not about control. It's about example. It's about being the man others look at and think, if he can keep going, so can I. But none of this happens by accident. It requires intention. It requires daily decisions. It requires you to wake up and say, I'm not done becoming. Because the moment you believe you've arrived is the moment you begin to decline. Growth must remain your standard. Not comfort, not routine, not ease, because ease slowly erodes a man's spirit, but challenge keeps him alive. So embrace it, seek it, lean into it, because every challenge you face now is shaping the final version of who you will become. And that version has the potential to be your strongest yet. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And that kind of strength is unshakable. So don't slow down, don't step back, don't let the number define your limits. Because you are not just a man who has lived 60 years, you are a man who has been forged by them, and what you do next will define everything. And now here you are. Not at the end, but at a crossroads most men never fully understand. Because this stage of life is not about holding on, it's about deciding who you will be for the rest of your days. There are only two paths from here. One is quiet, comfortable, familiar. It asks nothing more from you. It tells you to relax, to settle, to accept things as they are. It promises ease, but slowly takes away your fire, your hunger, your sense of purpose. The other path, it's harder. It demands something from you every single day. It asks you to keep growing, to keep pushing, to keep becoming, even when it would be easier not to. And this is where your true strength is revealed. Because strength at 60 is not about what you've already done, it's about what you're still willing to do. Can you still discipline your mind when doubt creeps in? Can you still take action when motivation fades? Can you still stand tall when life tries one more time to test you? Because make no mistake, life will test you. Not to break you, but to reveal you, to show you whether everything you've learned, everything you've endured, has truly shaped you into the man you were meant to be. And if you can still respond with courage instead of fear, if you can still move forward when others would stop, if you can still believe in yourself when no one else is watching, then you are operating at a level most men never reach. This is not about competing with younger men. This is not about proving anything to the world. This is about something far more important, becoming a man you respect. Because at the end of the day, when everything is stripped away, when the noise fades, when the world goes quiet, the only person you answer to is yourself. And there is no greater strength than being able to look in the mirror and feel proud of the man staring back at you. Not perfect, not flawless, but real, disciplined, honest, unbreakable, because that kind of man cannot be shaken by time. He cannot be defeated by age. He cannot be replaced by someone younger, faster, or stronger, because his power comes from something deeper. It comes from experience, from resilience, from a lifetime of getting back up again and again, no matter how many times he was knocked down. And here's the truth you need to hear: if you can still wake up with purpose, if you can still move your body, even when it resists, if you can still control your thoughts when negativity tries to take over, if you can still choose growth over comfort, then you are already ahead of most men alive. Not because you're better, but because you refuse to quit. And that is everything. Because quitting doesn't always look like giving up completely. Sometimes it looks like settling. Sometimes it looks like saying, "This is enough." when deep down you know you still have more to give. But you didn't settle. There's still something inside you that wants more growth, more meaning, more life, and that desire, that quiet hunger is your greatest strength. Protect it, feed it, honor it. Because it's the reason you're still here, still listening, still searching, and it's the reason your story is not over. In fact, it may just be getting started, because the man who continues at 60 becomes unstoppable at 70. The man who builds discipline at 60 becomes a force of nature at 70. The man who refuses to fade becomes a legend in the eyes of those who watch him rise again. So don't look at your age as a limitation. Look at it as proof that you've endured, proof that you've survived, proof that you've become stronger than you ever thought possible. And now the only thing left to decide is how far you're willing to go. Because the strongest men alive are not the ones who never struggle. They are the ones who never stop. Then listen carefully, because this is where everything comes together. There will come a day not far from now when you'll pause just for a moment, maybe early in the morning, maybe late at night, when the world is quiet and no one is watching. And in that silence, you'll look back, not at your age, not at the years, but at your choices, at the days you kept going when it would have been easier to stop, at the moments you chose discipline over comfort, at the times you stood alone but didn't fold. And in that moment, one truth will rise above everything else: you didn't waste your life. You lived it not perfectly but powerfully, not without pain but without surrender, because you understood something most men never do, that strength is not about avoiding the struggle. It's about becoming someone who can walk through it and still stand tall on the other side. And if you've made it this far, if you've carried your burdens, faced your doubts, and still found a way to move forward, then you are not just strong. You are rare, a man who didn't break when life gave him every reason to, a man who didn't fade when the world stopped paying attention, a man who kept becoming even when it would have been easier to stay the same. So from this moment on, don't just exist. Live with intention, wake up with purpose, move with discipline, speak with honesty, and most importantly, never betray the man you've worked so hard to become. Because your story is still being written, and the next chapter, it doesn't belong to your past. It belongs to your decision right now. To rise again, to go further, to prove, not to the world, but to yourself, that your best is not behind you, it's still ahead. So stand up, breathe deep, and take one more step forward, because the truth is simple and powerful. If you can still do that at 60, then you are stronger than most men alive.